So good evening, everyone. On behalf of Transform Europe, me and my colleague Tatiana Moutinho, we want to warmly welcome you to today's presentation of the outcomes of the comparative study entitled 100 Shades of the EU, Mapping the Political Economy of the EU Peripheries. My name is Dagmar Švendová. I am the Transform Europe facilitator for the strategic line of Central and Eastern Europe, and I'm based in Břeclav, Czech Republic. My colleague Tatiana Moutinho is based in Porto, Portugal, and she's responsible for the cooperation strategies for Southern Europe. We welcome you to today's presentation. Before we start, some technical information. Workshop is being recorded and will be available later in the Transform YouTube channel as well as through the Transform Europe website. I'd like to also add that as participants, you can ask the questions to our speakers. For this purpose, please use Q&A box, and you can also comment on what the speakers are saying and upvote the question of the others. So let us now proceed with this workshop. You may ask why we decided to address the issue of peripherality in the European Union. As we know, European Union is a very diverse political and cultural space, despite its leaning towards unity and uniformity. And it is not possible to understand the EU without understanding the power asymmetries that are implicit to its functioning. Therefore, to have a comprehensive understanding of the European Union as an economic and political space, we also need to focus on the question of peripherality through the lenses of peripheral regions. The so-called old periphery or Southern European countries, and the new periphery, or to say Central and Eastern European countries. Our research project, 100 Shades of the European Union, Mapping the Political Economy of the EU Periphery, was launched in collaboration with the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation more than 1.5 years ago. We will release the full study in English next week and on the Transform Europe website, where you will be able to download it for free of charge. Executive summaries in 10 languages will be available by the end of June. This research has been conducted by the interdisciplinary team of researchers coming from economic, sociology, political sciences, and history anthropology fields. The team is today with us and will present and discuss our preliminary findings. I will kindly ask my colleague Tatiana to introduce the team to you. Tati, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dagmar, for this presentation. So one of our researchers is Valentina Petrovic, who cannot be with us today. She was a Serbian PhD candidate, in between she got her degree in the Institute of Political Science at the European University, and is currently a postdoc at the Department of Sociology in the University of Zurich. We do have with us Guiseppe Celi, an Italian economist, currently Associated Professor of Economics in the University of Foggia. He was coordinator of the PhD program in Economic Theory at the University of Foggia and the Italian coordinator of the program Erasmus Mundus, Economics of International Trade and European Integration. He has recently published, together with other authors, the book Crisis in the European Monetary Union, a core-periphery perspective. And finally, Veronika Susova-Salminen, who is also with us. She's a Czech comparative historian based in Finland. Veronika has a PhD in anthropology at the Charles University in Prague, and her field of specialization is history and politics of modern Central and Eastern Europe, Russia, and post-Soviet space. Veronika works as researcher at the Center of Global Studies in Czechia, and she is editor-in-chief of the web magazine Argument. We would also like to mention and thank the 3 junior researchers who were responsible for data collection and analysis of several different indicators for each of the 3 regions analyzed in this study. Their names are Dorota Kolarska from Poland, Ioannis Silias from Greece, and Mihail Kaciaulianu from Romania. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce them correctly. So without further ado, I will now give the floor to our researchers.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this presentation of the today already ready study, which we have prepared for Transform and for Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. Before we start, I would like to tell you shortly our program. Basically, our program today is that I will, within some 10 minutes, try to shortly introduce the study itself. Then my colleague Guiseppe Celi will continue. He will present part of the study, which will be connected to the comparison of socio-economic models in both regions or in both peripheries, which we are studying. In this, I would like to say maybe we should not call it study, it's a really book because it has over 230 pages. So it is really the book, I would say, not simply just study. And he will connect this this comparison and the socio-economic profile of both peripheries with the second topic we are talking about, and that is the trade and trade networks. And then he will turn or give the floor again to me, and I will try to present you one part of the chapter connected with the political peripherality, which will be dedicated to the questions of representation of EU peripheries in the EU. And if we have time, I will try to connect it with the question of symbolic representation / misrepresentation, which is going to be from the third part of our study, which is studying the ideological and cultural peripherality in the EU. So this is our plan. I would like to also very shortly thank everybody who was on the board for nearly 2 years. Not only my colleagues, Valentina, who is unfortunately not with us because of family reasons, but however, it's also her work. So huge thanks to Valentina, huge thanks to Guiseppe, who was really important for us because he is really a pronounced economist, and this was the great thing. I would like to thank, of course, also everybody from Transform who was with us all 1.5 years, giving us support, giving us feedback, because this book was going through several feedbacks. We were discussing everything very, very carefully together. So the thanks goes to Connie, Hildebrandt, of course, thanks to go also for all others who were giving us feedback, Danai, Marga Ferre, Česlav Kulecha, and other. Who were supporting us. Of course, I would like to also thank Transform and Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung to investing trust in us in this project, because I understood it since the beginning that this is the question of trust, and I hope we didn't disappoint the trust, that the result is worthy. And finally, the huge thanks goes to Dagmar and Tatiana, who were with us all the time, who were helping us as editor, who were helping us with all possible organizatory things, and still they are helping us. And they did really a huge amount of work, which is maybe invisible, but it was essential. It was very important. So sorry that we are a bit like in Oscars, but this is the launch of the study, and we should dedicate this also to those who were working together. And finally, of course, I shouldn't forget about it. The thanks goes, of course, to our junior team who were with us in the beginning, who were helping us with connection of data. You will see when you see the study, there was a lot of data. a lot of data. So this was important work. So thank you very much, Kalin, Dorota, and Yanis. You may be noticed, I will point it out, we are all basically from Central East Europe or Southeast Europe or from Southern Europe, and this was on purpose. This was meant so. This was really written about the East from the Easterners and about the so-called South from the Southerners. Okay, I will now try to share with you my presentation in order to give you more precise look at the study. Of course, I don't have time and I don't want to spend more time about it, so I would like to only show the basic information about the study. As was already said, the focus is on peripherality in the European Union from the perspective of political economy. We want to return, in a way, politics back in economy. You know, we for a long time live under the neoliberalism dogma, under the neoliberal globalization, which was is telling us that that there is the market and the politics shouldn't intrude in the market. And so we are actually returning politics back in the economy. That was also on purpose. Of course, it is interdisciplinary study. It is using different approaches in each chapter to the different topics. So the most you can understand it from the name already. We are using the core-periphery approach or core-periphery theory. It is not any perfect theory, but it is something which is helping you if you are focusing on huge chunks of regions like we are, to understand and to analyze structure of power asymmetries. As you know, power is usually asymmetric. It is spread within economy, within politics, also within ideological culture space. So we were trying to see these all. Even if we focus more on peripheries, we of course always pay attention to the core of the European Union, core states of the European Union, like Germany, France, but other Western European countries also. We were also building on the approaches from development, economics, sociology of development, post-colonial theory, of course, word system analysis, and finally, the final touch, which is going through the whole study, is comparative approach. We are comparing the both peripheries, comparing their characteristics, comparing their problems, and we are of course trying to find the similarities, the differences, but we are trying to explain them from within the context. These contexts are of course at least 3 or 4: global context, European Union context, and of course the local regional context, which are important for understanding. So we really want to understand, actually very easy, if I put it very easy way, how the European Union is working for these regions, how the European Union is dealing with within the diverse space with them, what the European Union did for them or didn't do for them, and how actually the European Union is working from the perspective of peripheries. And as I said already, we are trying to grasp peripherality from different angles. It's not just economy, even economy is very important. Indeed, we have political economy in the name, but we were trying to show the interplay between politics and economy, interplay between politics and culture or ideology, interplay between all 3 together, and of course, compare again. Here, just for the clear picture, this is what is the focus of the study. This is the focus which EU peripheries we are dealing with. So you can see that we divided 2 peripheries. One we can call East, other we can call South, to 3 groups. This was the question which was connected much more with practical.
Veronika, sorry for interruption. Would you put your presentation to the presentation mode? Because if you have now shown something, it was not moving, so you need to.
Here it is showing, however, on my, so I don't know. you are sharing the screen, and you have
Okay.
here, I can restart if you want, but it is in presentation mode. So there is, still you don't see it?
I see still, I don't know what is the situation with the others, but we see the first slide only.
I already moved several slides and it is on presentation mode. You are sharing the screen, so we have some problem here, evidently. So I can try to restart it for you, and I will still continue to talk. That we have basically, as I already said, several. What about now?
We still only see the first slide.
You don't see them moving?
No. Try to select them manually, if possible.
What is manually?
Click on the slide. No.
Like this? Nothing.
It's not changing. No.
Okay, that is unfortunate. Hopefully, still nothing.
Now, yes. First,
so, and now?
Yes, now we see them.
But this is not the huge, you will not see the huge one, unfortunately. So if I put it in big one, if I put it in presentation mode, you will not see it probably, will you? Can you see it now?
Yes.
And now?
It's still the second slide.
I moved already to third one. So
keep it without the presentation mode and just click it manually, and then we can proceed. I think that would be the best. It's a little bit smaller, but I think it would be smoother.
Okay.
At least we can see what you are showing. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will stop the share and I will do it again. This is unfortunately technical issue I cannot solve here. Now you can see it at least. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So sorry for the small picture. You can see what peripheries we are dealing with. Last time I said that Central East Europe and Southeast Europe were divided in two small groups because it would be so many states that one researcher would be not able to deal with it. It would be 11 states, 11 different basically data collection and everything and analyzing, so we divided it. But however, we are still comparing two EU peripheries, which you can see. For the next slide, you will not see it full, it's not showing there full, but here you can see the strength or the population strength of both EU peripheries in the EU. If you divide them to these three groups, central, meaning Southern Europe, Central East Europe, and Southeast Europe. So you can see that they are actually having nearly over the half of the population. So we are talking about quite important chunk of the study. And because I don't want to take too long, I just mentioned here that you will see the study is divided in three parts, and each part is trying to research one of the three dimensions of peripherality. And we go through the socio-economic peripherality. We are interested in structural patterns of dependency, because dependency is one of the most important characteristics of periphery. It is usually somehow dependent on core, and this dependency is asymmetric. So it's not necessarily interdependency. Interdependency is more fair, it's more balanced, but this is dependency. It's dependency. We selected indicators through which we were trying to create a profile of these two peripheries and understand them. From this we came to the idea of to the kind of derivate, which was economic models. We were trying to explain what kind of economic models recently are present in these peripheries, and we were also trying to explain how they emerged historically, because both peripheries, Southern Europe and also, as you know, the Central, East and East Southern Europe have quite different histories. They have quite different experiences, and you have to pay attention to them. In the next chapter, we finally compare them, which will do my colleague now. So I will skip it. And we also paid attention to trade networks and both peripheries, including the question of global value chains. So this was the first. Second is the political peripherality. Here I will talk about, so I will skip it also. We have one part which was done by my colleague Valentina about cleavages within the European Union, which is quite interesting. We focus a lot on also on leftist political forces within these two peripheries in order to understand how these cleavages were formed, but there is no transnational cleavage. We also focus on the coalition potential between these two, because we were thinking that this is strategically important. And finally, I will present it today. We also have a look on the representation in the European Union. And finally, the third dimension of peripherality is connected with the culture or ideological dimension. And here we focus more specifically on hegemonic narratives about EU peripheries in the EU. I will try to manage to speak about it today. I'm a bit skeptical I will manage, but it is the study which is going a bit, if you have a look on the political and socio-economic, it's very structuralist. And here we go to post-structuralist approaches. We look on ideology, we look on discourses, we looked on the more symbolic, to the more symbolic level. So this is it. Of course, I am not able to tell you all the results now. As I said, 230 pages of writings. There is a lot of finding to each chapter, each question. I think there is a lot of stimulating reading, I hope, and also a lot of information. I think each chapter you can read independently, you can read it together, you can also read as a book, hopefully. So it's meant in order that everything clicks together, but you can read it in chunks. And now I would like to invite Guiseppe for his presentation. I will close my presentation, and I will invite him to present the social economic dimension of peripherality. It means he will have a look on recent economic models in both peripheries. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening to all. Thank you very much, Veronika, for your introduction, and thanks to Dagmar and Tatiana for introducing me. In my presentation, I will cover the socio-economic part of the book, and in particular, I will focus on a brief comparison of the economic models of the peripheries, and on the interaction between the peripheries themselves and between them and the core through the analysis of trade network and global value chain, with a particular focus on European automotive industry. This is the outline of my presentation. So, a few introductory words. After the birth of the euro, and after the eastward enlargement of the European Union, significant change occurred in production and trade relations among European countries. A profound hierarchical reorganization of European industrial structure occurred, and leading to the consolidation of Germany as hegemonic economic power in Europe. Two Austrian economists, Steyer and Staudinger, observed the emergence of the so-called Central European manufacturing core, leading to a reshuffling of hierarchical relation between core and peripheral countries. On the one hand, the eastward expansion of the powerful German manufacturing platform strengthened the industrial base of some peripheral countries, especially Visegrad countries, but On the other hand, other peripheral countries, like Southern Europe, experience other evolution, that is the industrialization, outflow of migrants, dependence on external financial source. And beside these two peripheries, there is a group of other countries that recently joined the EU that are preparing to become new peripheral pole, in European core-periphery relation. These countries are Balkans, Western Balkans, and Baltic states, even if these countries so far present weaker trade and production links with Germany and the other core countries. So when we compare the EU peripheries, we can say that both peripheries, the South and the East, share a dependent position in terms of capital investment and technologies, which determines a very important constraint for the economic development. However, these dependencies are structured according to different economic models, obviously, and obviously in different historical contexts. When we look at Southern EU periphery, we can observe that during the crisis of the 1970s, Southern European countries stopped or slowed down the process of industrialization, and the following years characterized by deregulation and liberalization of market on a global level, embarked on the road towards financialization, hypertrophy of services, and in some way, in some cases, hypertrophies of public sector. And financialization was a particularly distorting factor of their development because it contributed to divert resources from long-term industrial investment to activities with shorter-term returns, activities that are more volatile. So the result was the persistence of the incompleteness of the production matrix of Southern European countries, and so we can define the development model of these countries as a debt finance consumption that grew without a complete productive base. And the present economic model of, in Southern Europe is not supporting convergence in EU context. There are countries like Italy or Greece that have experienced a continuous economic and social decline, and even the competition from Eastern periphery itself, especially Visegrad countries as provider of intermediate goods for the German manufacturing industry, contributed to a further weakening of production base in South Europe. So in this picture, we can say the GDP per capita in Southern and Eastern European countries. So the trend that emerged in this picture is quite unequivocal, in the sense that Southern periphery go down and Eastern periphery goes up. While in the initial year, 1995, there is a clear division between the band of Southern Europe that displays a higher value of GDP per capita and the band of Eastern Europe that display a lower value of GDP per capita. At the end of the period, sorry, I don't see the end of the period because there are other images. At the end of the period, the two bands blurred. It is impressive to observe, like a country like Italy, the peripheralization of a country like Italy, that at the beginning of period, at the beginning of this period, as a value of GDP per capita quite high, no, with respect to the EU average, but this country ends up in the final period with a value of GDP per capita very close to that of Czech Republic. No? So when we consider the Eastern periphery, we observe that FDI are the key drivers of economic development of this area. And, however, even the robust development of the most dynamic Central Eastern European countries, the Visegrad economies that, as remarked before, expanded the industrial base thanks to their incorporation into Germany's value chain, present element of fragility, dependence on foreign capital and technology, limited domestic market, and in some way hypertrophy of export with respect to GDP, low wages, and in some cases monospecialization in car industry. And regarding the other Eastern European countries, the less dynamic Eastern European economies, the Baltic states and Southeastern European countries, these economies present fragilities that in some way are similar to those associated with Southern European economies. Actually, foreign direct investment in these countries are concentrated in the 5 sectors. And so these economies are financialized economies, like Baltic states, or they disproportionately rely on tourism activity like Bulgaria and Croatia. And in the end, Eastern European economies are converging, even if macroeconomic convergence at national level hides growing regional disparity, so internal divides, so divides within the country themselves. So now EU trade network, the hierarchical reorganization of core-periphery relation in Europe is investigated, looking at trade network over the period of over the 2 decades, starting from the euro inception. In this network, there are eight nodes, 8 poles. There are single countries like China and USA, and country group. So we have Eurozone core, the group of 4 countries, South Europe, Visegrad group, Balkan, Western Balkans, and Baltic states. We are considering this important trade partner, China and United States, in order to capture the integration of European dynamics in global dynamics. So the network is observed in 4 years, 2000, 2007, 2015, and 2019. And for each of this year, we have 4 pictures like this. So we have the poles of the network, single countries like China and United States, and country groups, Eurozone core, South Europe, etc. The arrow, the arrow in this picture start from the surplus country and point to the deficit countries, and the boxes alongside the arrows include the value of the gross value of export of surplus country, the red boxes, and of deficit country, the gray boxes. However, I jump to the main evidence. The the picture in the initial year, no, in 2000, so before the EU functioning, is this. No, the bulk of trade is intra-European trade. China still plays a limited role, no, in terms of magnitude of trade flows. The United States presents a deficit toward all poles of the network, or towards all the areas we have considered, and core countries have a trade surplus, but this surplus is not yet too pronounced, too big, as it will be in the following years. And another observation: intra-periphery trade is very limited, no? The trade between peripheral poles. When we look at the network 7 years after the euro inception, the picture changed dramatically, no? Because China continues to record trade surplus against all areas, but this time the magnitude of their trade flow is increases dramatically, and in this phase the role of China is very important, as exporter of low cost and low quality consumer goods, and the European import of this Chinese good hugely facilitated the process of labor market segmentation, hugely facilitated the increase of low-wage employment in Europe, both in core countries and in peripheral countries. Again, the overall USA trade deficit increases dramatically. Core countries increase the overall surplus, in a significant way, especially toward the southern European countries, and the Visegrad countries have a surplus towards all peripheral areas, and also the trade balance towards southern periphery changed the sign, becoming a surplus. And even if the Visegrad countries had a deficit toward Eurozone core, the increase of the export towards Eurozone core was impressive in this period. And another observation, if we look at the deficit of southern peripheral countries, the deficit is not due to the decrease of export, but is due to an increase in imports. So this confirms the thesis of some scholars, according to, like, for example, Storm and Nastepad, according to which the imbalances of southern peripheral countries are not due to a loss of price competitiveness of export, but is due to a massive financial flow channeled from the core countries to the peripheral countries, and boosting import capacity of southern periphery. Again, in 2015, there is again a big change in the network. Now the network, this transformation captures the effect of 2008 crisis and the effect of austerity policy. Now China reduces its trade surplus with Eurozone core, while Eurozone core doubles its export to China. Eurozone core increases its surplus with USA, but drastically reduces its surplus towards European peripheral countries, especially southern European countries. And this is the impact of austerity policies, because the austerity policy shrank a lot the import capacity of southern Europe. So, in response to the collapse of the domestic demand in the periphery due to austerity policy, Eurozone core countries were able to redirect their export to China and USA. And again, if we look at the network in 2015, there is a big consolidation of the Visegrad group as an important regional trader, and now these country groups have even show even a surplus towards the entire group of Eurozone core countries, And so last year, 2019, now it's possible to capture the Trump effect, because with the advent of Trump administration at the end of 2016, the condition for a reorientation of export of European core countries towards extra EU markets, toward China and USA, becomes less favorable. So the protectionist climate started to have adverse impact on export of European core countries, especially on Germany's export. And in fact, the weight of US imports in the network decreases a lot. A final observation is that if we look at the trade flow of Visegrad group during the entire period, from 2000 to 2019, the increase of the trade flow of this country group towards, especially toward Eurozone core, is impressive. But this is so there is emergence of very important regional trade leader, but this is strongly connected with the dependence of this country group on the value chain of the core countries, Germany in the forefront. So the analysis of the trade network is based on the export data expressed in gross values. So with this conventional trade statistics, it's not possible to disentangle final and intermediate goods. But the hallmark of the 90s was the international fragmentation of production. The share of intermediate goods on world trade grew enormously during this period. According to the word of Richard Baldwin, an American economist, this is the period of the great second unbundling, just to qualify this last wave of globalization. So also the notion of comparative advantage should be emendated in order to consider competition between stage of production, not only between final goods. So in order to capture this aspect of world trade, in order to capture international fragmentation of production, it's not possible. Conventional trade statistics based on gross value of export import are not sufficient. So we have to consider trade in value added. And the OECD trade in value added database provide user information for a number of countries, a range of sectors, and in this period, 2005 and 2015, even if there is a very, very recently update, because there is an extension until 2019, but we have not considered because this is very, very recent update. So using this trade in value-added database, OECD, we explore the backward and forward participation of the peripheral EU countries in global value chains. Oh, sorry. Definition. No? What is forward participation? Forward participation is a domestic value added contained in foreign export and is expressed as a share of country's gross export. And the backward participation is a foreign value added contained in country gross export. So I jump to the main evidence. The index of forward participation varies a lot, no, both within country group and between country group. But the main evidence is this: there are three countries that are the best performance. And these countries are Poland, no, in the Visegrad group, Romania in the Balkan group, and in the Western Balkan group, Slovenia. No? And an opposite trend is observed in the Baltic state with a sharp decline of the index, especially after the 2008 crisis. In South Europe, large countries show a very stagnant index of a very moderate increase of the index, but the small countries show a sharp decline of the index. Malta is completely an outlier. From the beginning, Malta show a very, very, very low index. No? If the forward participation is disaggregated by geographical area, the predominant area is the EU, no? And especially the best performer, the three countries mentioned before, show a very disproportionate orientation toward EU value chain. No? The EU is the 80% of their forward participation. This implies that the EU membership for these countries has been a very big opportunity to integrate in new value chain and by pursuing their FDI-driven economic model. When we look at backward participation, the main evidence is this. Remember that the backward participation is the foreign value added contained in gross domestic export. So in some ways, the dependence from external value added. In this case, the index is higher than the EU average. In general, backward participation has higher value than forward participation. Just a consideration on this point, on this evidence. While it's quite reasonable to assume that a very highly internationalized economy that rely heavily on export is open also on the side of import, a very high index of backward participation is a bad sign, is a sign of incompleteness of production matrix or dependence from abroad. Actually, a simple calculation of the correlation index between backward and forward participation produced this number, minus 0.57, indicating a significant negative relationship. So, when we move from this general picture to consider a specific sector, the automotive industry, which is emblematic of the evolution of value chain in Europe, the performance differential between the southern periphery and the eastern periphery in favor of eastern periphery, mainly Visegrad countries, emerge even more clearly. Look at this picture. This is value added from EU peripheries contained in German export in transport equipment. the green line is southern periphery. No, so the share for southern European countries is stagnant. No, is substantially stagnant. But in the case of Visegrad countries, no, the share increases continually, reaching 25%, and the gap increases almost more than 10%, no, in the final year. Again, this is the production of motor vehicle in Europe. There are countries like Czech Republic or Slovakia that have a share higher than the share associated with Italy, which is a historical producer of car. No. However, the downside of the better performance of Eastern Visegrad countries is that it itself exposes this country to the challenge posed by the electric transition, also in terms of impact on employment. This table highlights the countries that have a share of automotive employment in total employment exceeding 10%. There are countries like Romania and Slovakia that a very, very high share. So in some way, if you want, the mono-specialization of this country in car industry is quite risky, for this country in terms of impact for employment associated with the challenge posed by electric transition. And in general, the countries belonging to Central European manufacturing core, so also Germany, the core countries, in general, these countries are more exposed, to the problems of manufacturing reconversion of the automotive industry, for this reason. So, and I'm concluding. Sorry for this, my long presentation. And in addition to all this, there are production bottlenecks, related to the war in Ukraine. For example, this map of Europe is taken from my recent paper I wrote together with Dario Guarascio, Anna Simonazzi, Jelena Relic, and Francesco Zezza. And this picture, this map, shows the country's dependence on nickel imported from Russia. And nickel is an important material for the production of electric vehicles, particularly for batteries. And so the most dependent countries are the darkest ones. So you can say that among these countries, the darkest one area, there are Germany and Visegrad countries, and obviously there are also Baltic states and Finland. But furthermore, the recent shock represented by the war in Ukraine affect these countries relatively more, Germany, Visegrad countries, but in this case also Italy, even if we look at the employment in the most energy intensive sector as a share of total employment. Also in this case, the darkest area is the area in which the employment in energy the employment is more concentrated in energy-intensive sector, no? And so in general, so we can see that the country more vulnerable in this sense are Germany and Visegrad country, but in this case, to some extent, also Italy. So, in general, the war, like the previous shock, the 2008 crisis and coronavirus shocks, is producing asymmetric effect, on European countries, but this time with a reshuffling of the traditional core-periphery division, because we have Germany, Visegrad countries, but also Italy have in common a greater concentration of employment in energy-intensive sector and greater dependence on energy imports from Russia. So these countries are, share this vulnerability. So, concluding remarks. Recent shock, pandemic, war have revealed how fragile global value chains are. Many studies that have analyzed the propagation effect of shock like coronavirus alongside the value chain and show the importance of the effect in terms of supply substitution. So future development are uncertain, depending on two relative or two opposite effects. On the one hand, greater coordination allowed by digitalization production network could favor supplier substitution effect, and this circumstance could also prove detrimental for some peripheral countries more involved in the global value chain, but less equipped with digital technologies. And on the other hand, reshoring and shortening of value chain could occur, especially where production chains are less complex or automation is more advanced. And this second possibility could represent an opportunity to reverse the process of deindustrialization of peripheral countries. Okay, thanks for your attention. I hope that I have not overcome time limit. Okay.
Giuseppe, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think that I have to take one direct question already from the participant, since it's relating directly to what you have been trying to explain. It has been a question whether you can repeat a little bit the idea of the concept of the forward and backward participation, to understand it a little bit better. And once we have this further explanation, then we will continue. Thank you very much. Just try shortly, practically.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, forward participation is in some way is the active, participation of, in this case, of peripheral countries is the value added generated in peripheral countries contained in the export of in this case of world exports. So we are seeing the value added of generated in peripheral countries, in European peripheral countries, contained in world export. And but this value added are expressed at a share of the peripheral countries export. Yeah. So it's value added contained in world export, but expressed as a share, just to have a relative term, expressed as a share of the peripheral country export. I hope it's clear. The backward participation is the dependence of the peripheral country from the value added generated abroad. No? So is the foreign value added contained in the export of peripheral countries. So is the dependence from foreign value added. Okay.
Giuseppe, thank you very much. I think that we can continue. Believe Veronika's turn.
Yes, so I think I will have to shorten my presentation now that we are yes, in the time. I will try to share, but of course, I don't know why it doesn't work on my side. So we will see. It will be bad because I have few graphs which I would like to show, and which if they will be in small, you will not probably able to read them. So I will now try first if it is. Tell me if there is some changes or not. No changes.
Now you're on the second slide at the moment. Maybe if you try to press this little button when you have these at the bottom of the screen, beside the ruler, there is the play it, not from the play from the beginning, but on the bottom. If it makes any change.
No, probably no. I'm trying, but probably no. So
okay, so let's leave it like it is.
Yes, we will put it in the small one, and I will be descriptive more. And however, I have to condensate now. So, what was Giuseppe introducing to you was, of course, one part of the study dedicated to the social, economic, and trade dimension, particularly. And of course, we should add here that all the study has conclusions and policy implications, and these conclusions and policy implications are then particularly discussing also the ways out of this. So they are showing the possible solution for these problems, for the asymmetries of dependency on both peripheries. So there is also, of course, practical dimension. We were all the time thinking about practical dimension. My presentation will be also more practical from the point of view of functioning democracy. We know that European Union is criticized a long time for so-called democratic deficit, and in a way we looked at this problem from the perspective of peripheries and from the perspective of representation in the European Union. Every comparative study usually builds on secondary literature. It is using already redundant studies and research in order to, because you cannot really research every small detail within so large chunk of countries and so long period of time, like it's 30 years. So in this case, we also relied on done research. And in this case, we were using the database, which I will in a while introduce you, in order to understand how looks the representation in the political and also bureaucratic bodies of the European Union for these two EU peripheries. First of all, of course, we always try to give a look on the definitions and a bit problematize every issue. So this is the same about representation. We look at the question of representation. What does it mean in the democratic context? So this is the same in this case. What is literature telling us in general is that representation, of course, it is the acting on behalf of somebody, the basic definition, and it is telling us that it is very crucial for democratic governance, legitimacy, and consent building. And the important point which I'm quoting there from the literature is that it is helping citizens to perceive the governance as being both for the people and also by the people, of course. So this is very important. Please remember this quotation, because we will come in a while to the quite opposite information coming from the database. I would like to point out that for the European Union, which is very, very diverse space, as you know, it is diverse politically. Our study is showing how huge is the how big is this diversity within the, for example, when you look at the political cleavages in the European Union. But you know, it is also very diverse linguistically, religiously, culturally, from very different point of views. In a way, you always deal with 27 these days political communities or political spaces which have different histories, different all common, of course, also political traditions, political cultures, and so on. So from this point of view, I think European Union has a big issue with representation, because to put everything this together, it is very very complex problem, but it is of course important, because if, as we said, if you don't have working representation, if not everybody or majority is represented, you have a problem with the democratic legitimacy. As we said, legitimacy is very important. And also, sorry, now it came to the, now it did what I didn't want. I don't know why. We also are trying to explain what type of representation you have. So this I will say only shortly. We are seeing substantive, descriptive, and symbolic representation. Substantive is when actor is perceived by the represented as somebody who stands for them. This is slightly independent on class or gender or order. It's one type of representation. Then you have descriptive, and this is that the actor who is representing you is perceived as somebody who is objectively similar to you. And of course, symbolic one, and that is already giving the next dimension, where you already see the actor who is representing you as somebody who is same with you or on the same page with you, sharing your identity and culture. All these three are, we argue, important for us. But of course, the symbolic is specifically important, but same is the substantive. We also, and now you will not see, unfortunately, these numbers, but doesn't matter. We also have a look on the representation in the EU more particular, what type of representation processually and institutionally is the European Union having. And here you can find that it's very mixed type, because you have types of representation which is territorial. You know that usually in many institutions and bodies and agencies and so on, is the territorial, meaning each member state is representing itself, very important. But you have also electoral. It means that you are voting the representatives to the European Union. This is, for example, European Parliament. And you have, of course, still next one, direct and functional. So if you look on different institutions, different bodies of the European Union, you can see that they usually combine in some way. European Parliament, territorial, electoral. European Commission is more functional and territorial. European Council is territorial, and so on and so on. So this is even adding the diversity. The table here is actually taken from our study, and it is showing only very shortly clearly how is the population, number of states, and percentage of the states divided between these, basically Southern European periphery, Central East, and Southeast, which we took here together, and then Western Europe and Northern Europe, to have idea what is approximately the share. We used, as I already said, we used specific research and database created by European Democracy Consulting. which and we of course used or focused it on two EU peripheries. So we were using this database for our purposes. While this database is and the study is of course focusing more on everybody. But we, of course, were also focusing in a way everybody. The important or interesting on this research is that it is having huge database, which is covering 1950 until 2000, 1950s until 2020. So you have there really large database. It is, of course, limited in a way because it is covering only leadership position in the European Union. So it doesn't offer you like all employees, or who is working in European Commission, or who is working, you know, in these agencies. And of course, I'm not now giving you a list of these entities, positions, office holders, and so on, because you can find it in the study. We were just working with the complex database, and we used their geographical approach in order to understand how this representation works on the leading position, leadership position. This is like commissioner, this is like director general, and other positions within the European Union. These people are, of course, important. If you think from the perspective of the distribution of power, if you are boss, you have more power, you have more word in decision making, it's quite of important. This has importance. In some cases, you have also better media profile and so on, so people can more see you and so on. So we looked on this and we created, then we used the data, which you cannot probably see because I cannot make it bigger. But however, what we did was that we used data, divided our region is Southern Europe and Central East Europe and Southeast Europe, these two together. Then we were using data for Western Europe and Northern Europe, and we compared the percentage of the first total appointments, and then we compared the total length of their mandates. The results are quite interesting because we could find out that over the time we studied, means of course we studied since 2004, because for us it's important when both peripheries are within the European Union. Even as I will say in the while for Southern Europe, we went beyond also that because it was important to see the dynamics. So we can conclude there that since 2004, still over 50% of all important leadership position is in hands of Western Europeans. While the Southern Europeans are on the second position, and while Eastern Europeans are heavily underrepresented. This is not only our findings, this is also finding of the research which we are quoting, which is specifically warning about this huge underrepresentation. But this doesn't mean that Southern Europe will be specifically strong in representation, but simply it has slightly better position in this representation. We, as well as the research, we didn't mean and didn't search the absolute symmetry. It means that because let's say 38% of the member states are Southern, all 38% should be, you know, in the leading position. This is not meant. But if you find out that from the part of Europe which is having over 100 million of population, and which is actually, I will read this table for you, which is having, it's small, but the Central Eastern Europe has 39.3 member states, and it's 11 member states. If you find out that there is only 5 or 8.5% of representatives, it's a bit underrepresented, really. They are missing these people, they are not there. Then we try to say, okay, it seems that European Union has problem with peripheries. It is not having them involved in the appropriate or adequate way. There is something wrong. So we also compared a number of representatives from Southern Europe and Central East and Southeast Europe in numbers. in the leadership, again, using the same database, and we were trying to see dynamics. We first of all saw Southern Europe with Italy. You have to remember, Italy is founding member state of European Union. It was never any enlarged country. It was not coming later like we or other Southern European countries. So with Italy, that's this black one, the black part. You can see that it's relatively high. If you, however, count out Italy, you will find that it's not so great. It's much more downer. So Italy is relatively well represented due to the specific position. We can also say that Italy was actually would be seen as a core country before, and it is one of the countries which is peripheralizing over the last 30-40 years. So it's problematic. You can also find out, and now we were interesting to see why Central Eastern Europeans have problems, and did Southern Europeans, excluding Italy, had the same problem to be represented. We found out that they had indeed. However, if we compare, we took year 1986 as the beginning when, let's say, the other Southern Europeans are entering the European Union. We counted plus 18 years. That's the same time how Central East Europe is in general, at least the core of it in the European Union. We compared this 18 years and we still see a huge discrepancy, even when we see that that Southern Europeans are again underrepresented. We can say that Central East Europeans are super underrepresented. And as I said, even the authors of the research are pointing it out as a huge problem, which is very having impacts for the democratic credibility, for the legitimacy of the European Union. They even talk about the sources of Euro-skepticism they see there, together with other factors, and they also point out that illiberal tendencies are coming also from this. That simply you are not enough represented, you don't have the vote, you are not involved in the decision-making process. If I will have a few moments, I will say why, because one of the reasons for this is how was our region integrated in the European Union, integrated as a pupils, somebody who is rather listening orders from the models than being self-owning the reforms and being proactive itself. So that can be one of the reasons. Then we still went beyond this research, and we had to look on the influence, because influence is also important. And here we use different research. We use research which is produced by VoteWatch, and the research of VoteWatch is creating, and again, the study, I will have no time to describe it, study is explaining their scale, how they are measuring the influence of European Parliament members. We focused on 100 most influential, and we found out again that percentually the biggest chunk is again coming to the Western Europe. 56 of these 100 is coming from the Western Europe, by 27 of them from Southern Europe, 13 from Central East Europe, and 4 from Northern Europe. This was the division we were using. So here you see that the influence is again very unequal. There is only few Central East Europeans, some Southern Europeans, and I have to add that many of these 13 of Central East Europeans among the influential are those who are vice president of European Parliament. It is coming with the function, this influence, or in the important position in fractions of the European Parliament. So that's also next discrepancy we found in the data. One good news which we can at least say, when we looked on the leadership of the European Parliament, not on the presidents, which was within this database which we used before, but these were vice presidents. So the vice leadership of the European Parliament there, again, you cannot see it unfortunately so well, but you can see there is a quite nice dynamic between for the Central East and Southeast Europe, because there is actually better there is rise in the position over the last years, and it happened so that actually the South and East is nearly on the same way. Meanwhile, what happened is that Western Europeans actually went down with this. So this was the work with data we did, and I already mentioned few things which I will only sum up very quickly. And again, remember this first quotation, how important is representation for perception of citizens, that they are not governed by somebody distant there in the Brussels, but they are governed by themselves. This is the important part. And in the diverse space like this European Union created by, in a way, autonomous political communities, this is super important in my opinion. And unfortunately, we are finding that it's not working well. At least for Eastern Periphery, dramatically not well, and for the Southern Europe, it's not anything super great. And you can see there how long it took for them, considering they were integrated in 1986 in the European Union, besides, of course, Malta and Cyprus, how long it took for them to get these better numbers. And probably how long it will take for us to get these better numbers. So you see really huge underrepresentation of Eastern Periphery. You see a weak representation of the Southern Periphery, again, relatively compared with the number of member states and with the number of population. And I don't mean it that it should be equal, but it's really not possible that you have, like, for Eastern Europe 2% in some cases of the office holding, and for Western Europe 70%. These are really the dates you can find for several bodies within the dynamic of last 18 years. And finally, what is clear, that the Western Europe is still predominant over all institutions of the European Union. Western Europe means the core. That is the simplest I can tell it. It is the core. The question, and I will now totally shortly, I wanted to speak about symbolic representation, because the question is why this is the problem. All the talk about the European Union, the diversity, unity in diversity, and many other nice words, and we see in this case this very unequal picture. Which, as I said, has impacts for the legitimacy of the European Union, for the interest of people in the European Union, for the way that they are feeling alienated and not interested. You can have a look that actually in the Central East Europe and Southeast Europe, in many countries, there is very high levels of Euroscepticism. So, of course, I don't say it's only because of the weak representation. There are many other factors, but this is one of them. They don't feel to be represented by the institution of the European Union, because these institutions are predominantly in the hands of core and bureaucrats who are not representing them, who are not looking like them, if I will say it. And it is, of course, very, very easy creating. It is also very easily politically misused, by the way, because then you have the populists, you have particular populist parties who will, of course, use this kind of argument very easily. Why it's so? What is wrong about the East Europe? What is wrong about the Southern Europe? Why they cannot be integrated in a way and represented in a more or less equal numbers? This is, of course, connected with a lot of things. I would now just simply and very shortly say that our study is also speaking about ideological and symbolic dimension of peripherality. And this is, I think, interesting chapter, which is showing you that you have really different levels of how the power is unequally distributed, and that it goes also through the narration, it goes through language, it goes in production of meanings, it goes from the hegemonic narratives about the peripheries, which are usually produced in the core. Now, remember, those who, for example, were producing the reports about the enlargement, Eastern enlargement, I was studying, and we have there whole section which is analyzing these reports. These were the Democrats from the bureaucracy, which is predominantly in the leading function, led by the Western Europeans. by the core countries. And in a way, these people were speaking about the Eastern Europeans or Eastern European accession countries. They were telling them their lacks and their problems, and they were not part of the region, of course. They were speaking for them, about them, and they were also measuring them, evaluating them, describing them, and they created all the system how the whole region was actually invited to the European Union, which was very unequal and very much based also on the core-periphery relations. Actually, unfortunately, it reproduced them. It didn't stop them. Even I would say it more clearly, it even reproduced the old mentality of the Cold War. Even it was saying that we said goodbye to the division of Europe. It was dividing Europe under the different culture and ideological lines, but still there was the clear division. So I will not continue more because our time is out, but I will invite you to read the study. Read also this part, which is specifically interested in the way how hegemonic narratives of the core were describing and organizing and putting forward the process of enlargement of the European Union, how the European Union was symbolically enlarged during 1994-2007-13. And then the next focus, because we of course have to invite always South Europeans, they are with us together in this peripheral boat. There we look at the example of crisis in Greece, the global financial crisis as located in Greece, and we are studying there from other side how was the crisis within the European Union and also within the different medial spaces of the European Union and by politicians of European Union, how it was constructed, how basically what happened in Greece was in a way retold in a way that nobody talks really about political economy and about the how basically what are the problems of the Greek economy integrated in the European Union. What are the sources of this peripheral position, and who is having actually also the advantage from this peripheral position, which is always not the peripheral country, of course, so much. Elites maybe, but the country people itself no. But it was moving the attention to the cultural problems, essentialization, putting very Orientalist stereotypes, very same like on the Eastern Europeans, very Orientalist stereotypes about the Southern Europe, about Greece in particular, only in order to keep the hegemonic discourse about neoliberalism, about neoliberal European Union, and of course not question the hegemonic position of the core, specifically we have to say of unfortunately Germany in this case. So I will only invite you to read this. It is connected nicely together, I hope, because you have in Giuseppe's chapter, you have a very nice chapter where he also explains the global financial crisis in the Southern Europe, what it did, how it was, what was the context and what was the main problems. And then I am building on this from the other perspective and showing how actually the power is distributed and how core and periphery relations are working. And of course, if you will be at the summer university, I can also invite you to our workshop where we will be with Giuseppe personally, not this in-personal webinar. If you have possibility to come or you are coming, then I will try to present specifically this dimension to you there personally. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry that we are over the time a bit.
Veronika, thank you very much for this excellent presentation. Indeed, we are a little bit over the time, but I think it was worth it. I see that most of the participants are still with us, so there is an interest to follow. And I'm happy to say that there are already 6 questions in the Q&A box. So most are directed to the first part of the presentation, since there was more time for the participants to think on the the topic. So I will kindly ask you if the participants can stay. Please stay. We will try to answer to those questions in, let's say, the 30 minutes, not longer. So, 15 to 30 minutes the most. But so I will start with the question which arrived first. It's from Cornelia Hildebrand, asking, how does diversity of history work today, and how do the cleavages of the three peripheries differ?
So that's probably to me.
Probably.
So I will be short as I can, but this is a very, very complex question. But first, in the study or in the book, we are really trying to be careful about the context, about the historical context of both. Now there are not three peripheries, there are two, but we divided this one to so it's like three regions, but two peripheries. So we were trying to go through this historical context in order to see the differences, the different starting points, because these differences are now, you have starting points which are much more older than any European integration. We are focusing on it. Also, they are really connected with the geography of historical capitalism in Europe. We are very much forgetting about this, how capitalism changed the Europe, how it created peripheries, how it peripherized some countries, and how some countries were able to keep core position for a very long time, basically since the 15th or 16th century. But what is for us the most important is the recent developments, and here we go to explain the Southern European story, since now Italy is a bit outside, because as we know, as I said, it is the founding member of the European Union. But on the other hand, it is part of Southern Europe, and it is peripherized, and brutally peripherized, we have to say. And by the way, it is also a country which is having the biggest crossroads for both regions, or for both euro-peripheries or EU peripheries, from the position of alliances, experiences, and other things. Even alliance building, they are really located like core for us, actually. We can discuss it later somewhere, but it's interesting. So Italy is one thing, and then you have these Southern European countries which were integrated after 1986, after the period of fascist authoritarian regimes. Then you have, of course, Malta and Cyprus, which were actually integrated at the same time, like were four countries, and Baltic countries, 2004. They were longest time waiting for the accession, actually, if you look statistically. So the Southern Europe was coming from this situation. It was exit strategy for them, the integration in the European Union from the fascist authoritarian systems, which were still, however, if you look on the economic profile, they were still capitalist. So they were politically discontinued, and economically there was some kind of continuity. However, they had not luck, because they actually entered the European Union at the moment after the crisis of 70s, and the moment when the neoliberal dogma was really really on the rise. While, as you know, Central East Europe and Southeast Europe was integrated in the beginning, in the 90s, when the neoliberalism was on the peak. It was the dogma which was really seen as important, as the only one, and they were entering the systemic discontinuous development, because there was the so-called state socialism. Some call it post-communism or communism. We call it state socialist part, and this meant that there was a huge discontinuity in absolutely everything. This was the political discontinuity. This was the systemic discontinuity in economic of state. You have three states which crumbled in this region. If you take the large region, you have really like huge discontinuity. You have huge recession, which some compare to the war, like same amount of fall as you have in the times of war. So these were different starting points, different experiences, but still, if you look on the main structure of the peripherality, dependence on somebody there in the core, or financially, or in FDIs, as we said, the Southern Europe is not didn't have possibility, thanks to the entering to the European, to create the manufacturing or finish the manufacturing platform. Our region, it means our periphery, had it, but it was reshuffled, destroyed, redistributed, privatized, and so on, and recreated. You will see there the numbers, how reindustrialization, the industrialization went hand in hand, and how diverse it was in each region. So these are really different, in a way, different stories. We also, when we focus on political, here is also very important context, historical context, because here you go, because the exit in Southern Europe was based on the democratization process. That was the luck for the South. And in a way, it was based much more on the leftist or center leftist ideologies and parties who were against these rightist parties, which were somehow more or less connected with this authoritarian fascist regime. In the case of our region, meaning the Eastern Europe periphery, the exit strategy was from this predominance of the state socialist one-party systems very often, which were having leftist ideology, which were connected with the left, and the reshuffle was based on the restoration of capitalism and on the anti-communist rhetorics. So in a way, we are still in the position, we are explaining today and showing how weak is the left in our region and how it is connected with these contexts. So the contexts are enormously important. However, still, we are coming to the conclusion that both regions are having very similar vulnerabilities. Both are dependent on very similar actors, meaning usually France, Germany, or the core countries. So from this point of view, you have like different and common together. As I said, for both is important neoliberalism. In the case of cleavages, that's the problem side, conflicting lines, and what we were trying to find is some transnational cleavage. Let's say why it's not in EU, the cleavage, core versus periphery. Actually, why we peripheries, we don't join against the core and say, okay, this is not good for us, our interests are not covered well, the regulation system is not good for weak economies, we don't want to continue with this kind of a social system which is European Union helping to function in our states. Why there is not? And we have to say there is not. There are small possibilities for its creation, and there are several reasons for it, including this historical, as I was describing, you have different experiences, but also ideological, which I couldn't explain today much, but one of my arguments is really that this ideological dominance of the core is creating basically between us the division, which is same like, you know, it's what Guiseppe said in the trade, by the way. Guiseppe said clearly, between peripheries, there is not substantial trade going on. There is nothing that Southern Europe would do business with Central Europe independently of the core. And this is the same. We let the core to be the filter. We let the filter everything to core, to France and Germany, and we don't talk to each other. So there is no transnational cleavage in this sense, core periphery, and it is one of the reasons within if you look on the political map of Europe, how European Union is working is, and we are a lot talking about this already in the introduction, is depoliticization of the European Union. If you have depoliticized, expert-based, you know, system where you cannot really put the democratic decision, you cannot democratize it easily, then it is very difficult to create any cleavage, any alliance, because the system, how it works, is based on depoliticization. So that's in not short, but that's the answer.
Thank you very much, Veronika, for this explanation. I go directly to Giuseppe. There is a question: what kind of economic industrial policy would you recommend to increase the share of the Southern European countries in the GDP and to achieve a social ecological transition?
I don't know. But I think that no, the obsession for competitiveness dominate the, the scene of European development in this year. So I think that in the case of Central Eastern European countries, an excessive polarization, for example, in automotive industry, is not good, in some way, especially now in which there are the challenge associated with the electric transition. So I think also for the Central Eastern European countries, it's important to overcome the export-led model and to expand the internal market. So, for example, in the final chapter, the chapter of policy recommendation, we speak about the example of long-term care. So an industrial, it's possible also to think about an industrial policy that fits, that go towards social needs. Also, the example of social, long-term care, to go to resolve the problem of aging. I think also in this case, yes, this is these are services, but there are a lot of industries connected to these social services, biomedical, technologies, etc., biomedicine, etc. So it's important to think not only an industrial policy that aim to increase competitiveness for export, but an industrial policy to expand internal market, also in sector that aim to satisfy social needs. I think. So I think also in the case of Central Eastern European, maybe it's a taboo, not to rely on automotive industry. But I think especially in this in this phase, it's a very uncertain phase for the challenge of electric transition, and I think that we have to think about another industrial policies, not to boost competitiveness, export-led model, etc., etc.
Giuseppe, you are actually now kind of naturally reacting to some other questions which tackles, this automotive industry. There was a question if the automotive industry plays such an important role, as you just highlighted again, what this means for the socio-ecological transformation for the peripheries, and what the perspective do they have? I believe that you partly tackled the question, which kind of also the part of your answer was also reflecting on the, what is there for the industrial policy, EU industrial policy, so there was a question whether do you see the ways how to deepen the EU integration, the European industry policy, or rather a drifting apart?
No, I think it's important not to have a European industrial policy, but in the direction that I mentioned before, no? I think. Because also the Green Deal, no, is also the Green Deal is very insidious, no, it's very risky. Also, no, not this very very nice, very appealing, Green Deal, because the risk is to perpetuate also the core periphery model, no? Because if you look, for example, at the biorefinery, so the bioeconomy, so the transformation of biomass, so all the technologies of biorefinery are core technologies, no? And biorefinery are also located in the north, so it's also through the Green Deal, the risk is to perpetuate the core periphery relation, the core periphery model. Also the path towards the green transition has not to be dominated by big transnational companies, for example, because they are also interested to substitute fossil sources with renewable, but just for business reason, not for ecological reason. So I think that we have to be to have big attention about the risk associated also with Green Deal. Yes, it's very appealing, but it's very risky.
Giuseppe, thank you very much. This leads us to, let's say, the two questions, which again was partly tackled also by your presentation, but maybe for the sake of the clarity, it touches the foreign direct investment and forward participation, backward participation, but also the, let's say, the position of the Italy in the complex. So I will read them out. What extent are backward and forward participation in trade related to inward and onward foreign direct investment and the ownership of transnational corporation? So this is one question. And the second question is, can Italy really be considered as a peripheral country in the same sense as the countries of Central Eastern Europe? Does it have a much higher degree of onward FDI? Isn't it a home country of many more transnational corporations? So this relates to the Italy particular position. So I will ask you kind of shortly.
Yes, a lot of questions.
Yes, a lot of questions, very complex one.
Yes, I think that there is a relationship between backward-forward participation in value chain and inward-outward FDI. The relationship is this: an inward FDI generate in the country in which investment is destined. In this country, there is a generation of value added. So the inward FDI is associated with the forward participation to go to global value chain. Okay, and the opposite is for the outward FDI. The outward FDI is associated with backward participation in global value chain. So the correlation is this. I don't know if I explained. So yes, there is a correlation between the two. So inward FDI is associated with forward participation in global value chain, and outward FDI is associated with backward participation in FDI in global value chain. Yeah. So this is the first question. The other question, Italy. Yes, I think yes, Italy is very particular case, no? So it's very difficult to consider Italy as a peripheral, no, country. But no, the problem started in the first half of the 90s, when no, the imperative, no, mandate, no, for Maastricht, no, imposed to Italy the strangulation of internal demand. Italy was the more, it's very difficult to accept, but this is true. Italy is the more virtuous countries, no, in terms of fiscal restriction, no, starting in the first half of the 90s. But this implies a strangulation of internal demand and of industrial structure in Italy. There is a very good book of an Italian scholar, Luciano Gallino. The title in Italiano is Il declino dell'industria italiana, no? Is the decline of Italian industry. No? Very important industry like electronics or aerospace, no, are completely dismantled in Italy, no. So no, very promising industry were dismantled, no. For example, also in Airbus consortium, no, the big European project, Italy didn't participate, no. So I think that it's true. There is a peripheralization, no, of Italy, starting just in the first half of the 90s. No, just to respect the imperative criteria of Maastricht. No, yeah.
Giuseppe, thank you very much. I think that we exhaust all the questions, but in very respectful manner, and I hope that we have satisfied our viewers. Surely there will be many more questions, and we actually welcome everyone, you know, who will read, firstly to read the ebook, the study, the full study, which will be released by the end of the next week, free to download from the website of Transform. It's published in English, but we will also publish an executive summary in 10 languages: Greek, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Czech, Hungarian, Polish, Bulgarian, Lithuanian, and Serbo-Croatian. So you will be also able to read the executive summary and one of the Central Eastern European and Southern European languages. We want to make the study as accessible, available as possible, so that it's free of charge download. And we would like to, in coming months, in next year, to bring these findings of the study and the topic of the study to the broader discussion within the academia, but also within the, let's say, the political scientists, politicians. And we are open for this dialogue. So also, if you are interested to work with us to exchange on this issue, you can always contact me on Tatiana Moutinho, my colleague. Our contacts are on the website of Transform. So please feel free to contact us directly and cast any sort of question or the proposal for the, let's say, the continuation of this discussion. The next discussion, as Tati already wrote in the chat, will be held at the European Left Summer University in Aveiro, Portugal, on 10th of July. So if you happen to be there, please come and join our workshop. We will have also a member of the European Parliament, José Guzmão, the economist and a member of the Bloco de Esquerda, presenting the study, or having the political outlook on the study. So I think this will be again the added value to have also the political incentives from the member of the European Parliament. So again, I invite you to this workshop. Otherwise, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank the whole research team, all the people who have been contributing and helping, giving us the advice and the consultation during all this process. And surely you all participants and people who will watch this video on the YouTube. Thank you very much for checking the website of Transform, reading the study, and hopefully finding it useful for your work and for the future policy making, so to say. So thank you very much. Have a nice evening, and hopefully see you in other occasion at the Transform events. All the best to all of you.